In 1993, Steven Spielberg, who had previously directed successful blockbusters like Jaws, E.T., and Jurassic Park, came out with a new movie called Schindler's List. For those who haven't seen the movie, here's how it goes. It's the true story about Oskar Schindler, a German Nazi who lived during World War II. He wanted to take advantage of the promising war economy and the fact that it was extremely cheap to employ Jews. And he created a factory. He started with about 350 Jewish employees. When people think of World War II and Jews, they often think of concentration camps. A lot is forgotten about the Jewish ghettos, but it's an important scene of the first half of this movie. When Jews were forced to leave their homes and many of their belongings, they were relocated and assigned to living in the ghetto, where at any time they could be taken to a concentration camp. Schindler provided a place for many of the Jews to get away from the ghetto, just for the day, to work in his factory. Eventually the ghetto gets torn apart by a new regime of Nazi leaders, and every Jew is forced to work in the Krakow-Plaszow concentration camp. In this new setting, there are brutal and random execution, piles of Jewish bodies to be collected and burnt, and terrible living conditions. In the middle of this bleak and depressing situation is Schindler, who bribes Nazis with money, parties, and expensive items off the black market. In exchange, he simply wanted his Jewish workers to come to his factory to work during the day instead of working in the concentration camps.
Oskar Schindler was a very complex man, and the movie definitely reflects that. He isn't the cliche Hollywood movie hero. He enjoys money, status, and women that are not his wife. In the beginning phase of his business, he's only there for monetary gain. He only wants the Jewish employees because they're cheaper than the Polish. And he wants the war to continue because the war economy is good for his factory and for himself. He didn't care about the individual Jewish employees and what he was doing for them. He saw each of them as a number essential to production. Eventually, Schindler realizes what he's doing for the Jewish workers, and he changes. He still bribes Nazi officers, but his motive has changed. He really wants to save as many Jews as he can. When news comes out that the Krakow-Plaszow concentration camp is going to be shut down, all the Jews are to be sent to Auschwitz. Schindler creates a list. His list consists of 1,200 Jews that were to travel with him to a new factory far away from the war and escape the gas chambers at Auschwitz. He saved the lives of 1,200 Jews who had otherwise been killed, risking his own life, money, and reputation in the process. The reason Spielberg wanted to direct this movie and tell this story was to educate people. Surprisingly, there are many people all over the world who don't believe the Holocaust really happened, and the story of the Schindler is another true and inspiring story that happened during the Holocaust. Spielberg hoped that someday this film would be shown in high schools to show people what really happened.
This film definitely paints a picture of what happened during the Holocaust. In class, we talked about how powerful an image can be. Just picture the image of a cheerful Jewish child being led away to Auschwitz and eventually into gas chambers, unknowingly waving goodbye to their parents forever. Picture the belongings of Jewish people being sorted into piles and analyzed for their worth. Picture the boy who was shot just because he bent down to tie his shoelace. These are very powerful and lasting images shown in Schindler's List. An idea called funded memory was introduced by a man named John Dewey. He said that funded memory is how a culture remembers and reconstructs its own history. There's a discussion on what the role of entertainment and news programming is with funded memory. Some people would make the argument that they don't want to see these kinds of images because these images are very, very powerful and could act as a trigger. They think that people can easily be educated about the Holocaust and other ethnic cleansings by a textbook in a classroom. The images of war, especially those shown in Schindler's List, are very graphic, and you don't always know the age of the person who would be seeing these powerful images. Some would argue that news and entertainment programming should show these images because they have an emotional effect on people. And people respond to emotion more than anything else. If Schindler's List teaches people anything, it's that there's a difference between seeing only a number, like 1,200 Jewish people saved, or 6 million Jews killed, and seeing someone's face, their family, their story of survival, or their story of death. These visual representations are extremely powerful and should be shown to give people empathy and a different perspective.
Now let's talk about this type of movie. Schindler's List is a different kind of movie. It's a docudrama. A docudrama dramatizes movies based on real events. The movie has a whole different feel to it. It's shown in black and white and features documentary-looking subtitles and music. Some might make the argument that these type of docudramas aren't the best tool to focus on big social issues like ethnic cleansing, spouse abuse, or child molestation. But that documentary would be much better because they focus on the full truth of the situation, not dramatize events that are mostly true. For example, when Schindler's List came out, there was also ethnic cleansing happening in Bosnia. If people really wanted to engage in the public and discuss and create a changing reaction, a documentary about the ethnic cleansing there would have been a great way of getting people to see a different perspective and act. On the other hand, using docudramas is a great tool to focus on these types of social issues, because an alternative would be a huge blockbuster with a fictional story, which would get a lot of views but not a lot of truth and exposure. Docudramas are much better than that option because you can still have a big name like Spielberg to draw crowds, but he'll be true to the storyline and will get a large effect. It's also not that easy to make a current documentary about the Holocaust. You don't get any of the original images, which that makes Schindler's List so powerful.
Another thing to consider with these docudramas is the role of the movie critic. For this film in particular, the regular film critics watched it and gave it amazing reviews for the directing by Spielberg, the acting, the cinematography, and the music. It also won several Academy Awards. But should a film like this have the same kind of movie critics and types of awards? Some would argue that it should, because it's a big name like Steven Spielberg, and the ones who critiqued his past films should review this one. Others would argue that the role of the movie critic should go a little further. With a movie like Schindler's List, it doesn't seem right to compare it to E.T. or Jaws. Those movies have the purpose to entertain, but Spielberg said himself that this movie's purpose is to educate, and to remember the Schindler's Jews and the atrocities of the Holocaust. People who review films like this should be the ones who look for the effect on people who watch Schindler's List. It's so much more than critiquing the acting or the special effects or the cinematography, because the purpose isn't to entertain.
In conclusion, we wanted to share with you guys the last scene from Schindler's List. It features Schindler surrounded by the 1,100 Jewish people he had saved. We've talked a lot lately in class about using emotion to bring about social change. And in this scene, it is definitely one of the more emotional ones. It really shows how important one person's life is, especially to Oskar Schindler.
I could have got more out. I could have got more. I don't know if I just... I could have got more.
Oskar, there are 1,100 people who are alive because of you. Look at them.
If I'd made more money. I threw away so much money. You have no idea. If I just...
There will be generations because of what you did.
I didn't do enough.
You did so much.
This car. Gert would have bought this car. Why did I keep the car? 10 people right there. 10 people. 10 more people. This pin. 2 people. This is gold. 2 more people. You would have given me 2 for it. At least 1. You would have given me 1. 1 more. 1 more person. Person stand. For this. I could have got 1 more person. And I didn't. I didn't.
If you haven't been able to tell, Schindler's List is a very controversial film. And this really goes back to our discussion on social change. People say that it's a classic. You have to see it, that type of movie, regardless of the casual violence and nudity, because of the effect it has on you. And that's exactly what we think Spielberg wanted to do, to create social change through emotion.